Hey there, today we're going to hear Ilson's story. Based on what I've been studying, his experience isn't your typical near-death experience, but it's got a very relevant and spiritual aspect. He was an atheist for a long time, but after an accident and a quick experience, he changed his way of thinking completely over the years. Since there's a supernatural element to his experience, we decided to share it with you all. If you've had an NDE or know someone who has, write to us at the email in the description. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support us and like this video. Now let's dive into Ilson's story.
My name is Ilson Silveira. I'm a university professor. In 2012, during one of my academic trips, I went to Portugal at the request of my director to give 2 lectures, one at the University of Lisbon and another at the University of Algarve in Faro, southern Portugal. On April 30th, 2012, I had to rent a car to travel to Faro the next day. I asked my PhD student Leandro to come with me. Since I've never been a fan of driving, I asked Leandro to drive. On our way to the hotel, we were using maps because GPS wasn't that common back then. I was the co-pilot, sitting next to Leandro with an open map while he drove a small car. The avenue where our hotel was located was big, with a median strip and a crossing point between lanes. Leandro decided to cross there, thinking we could since there were no traffic lights. However, we didn't know there was a traffic rule allowing only postal, police, or ambulance vehicles to use that crossing. Suddenly, a BMW ran a red light, collided with us, and pushed our car towards a pole. The last thing I remember before the crash was having the map open and then seeing the BMW practically in my lap. After the crash, I remember waking up in a very dark place, but I felt like there were other people around. A very close voice started talking to me saying, "My son, you've had everything you wanted in life. You've been blessed, achieved your dream job, married the woman you desired, traveled the world, and got your dream job. But your journey isn't over. You still need to go through some trials." The voice continued, "But don't worry. Your return will be in such a way that you won't have any sequelae. You won't have any issues with your spinal cord." I found this information very specific because I wasn't feeling anything abnormal at the time. On the contrary, I felt like I was being caressed the whole time. The voice sounded very familiar, and I wondered if it was my dad, who had passed away 3 years earlier. The tone was very similar to his. It might have been my grandfather, who I barely knew. After that, I felt like I was being guided to return. At one point, the voice asked me to tap my foot 3 times to show I hadn't lost nerve connection with my legs. When I woke up, Leandro was beside me, kissing my hand and emotionally saying, "Uncle, thank God you're alive." He repeated it several times. A bit groggy, I asked, "Am I? Wasn't I supposed to be?" Leandro explained that the accident was really bad and that we were seriously injured. I then fainted again and remember nothing else. The only difference was that when I woke up, they were sawing the roof of the Clio and pulling me out. Before pulling me out, they put a neck brace on me. I was put on a stretcher and taken to the ambulance. Apparently, Leandro didn't suffer anything serious. We later found out he had a fractured kneecap. When I got to the ambulance, I felt like someone was carrying me. I didn't feel a bit of pain, even though I had cut my head on the car's twisted headrest and was drenched in blood. It was a superficial wound, but left a mark on my head. I remember holding Leandro's hand while we headed to the hospital. A paramedic commented to her colleague that it was the first time she'd seen someone come out of such a bad side collision, moving their legs, as there are usually spinal cord issues. I found it curious because it had been mentioned by the voice in that dark place. I arrived at the hospital and received a local anesthetic. They asked if I felt pain, and I said no. They took me for a CT scan, which revealed I had a concussion and several small hemorrhages. I don't know the exact medical terms, but the image looked like someone had splattered liquid on a mirror. I was taken to a semi-ICU, where they stitched my head without me feeling any pain. My main concern was talking to my family. I borrowed a phone from a student in the Science Without Borders program, who was there. Throughout this time, what impressed me most was the feeling of love and peace, as if someone was caressing and reassuring me the whole time. I stayed 2 or 3 days in the semi-ICU of a simple, but very well-organized and clean public hospital. It was an old hospital in the historic center of Lisbon. I think it was called São José. I was treated very well there. I'm pretty fearful, and there were people suffering a lot around me. But I always had the impression that someone was protecting and comforting me, a feeling comparable to taking a super tranquilizer and being hugged. This impressed me more than the actual memory of the words in the dark place. A few days later, I went to the same hotel I had seen right before the accident. Leandro and Juliana, my students, took care of me with a lot of attention and affection. Throughout the whole time, I didn't feel any pain. In fact, I have the medical record showing that I never felt pain, which the doctor said was impossible. I only remember taking a painkiller in the semi-ICU. My wife arrived around the 6th or 7th day. When Leandro opened the hotel room door, and my wife came towards me, I felt like something left me and went away. From then on, I only felt the love my wife gave me, and it was a lot. I think when I was in the dark place where someone spoke to me, it must have been brief because I woke up in the car with Leandro kissing my hand. According to him, we stayed in the car for about 40 minutes until they got us out, and for him, it felt like an eternity. But I really have no sense of how long I was in the dark place. In the future, I studied what a near-death experience is, because I'm a scientist and was an atheist, trying to understand what happened in a scientific way. I discovered that I didn't go through many of the traditional stages of an NDE, which made me doubt if it was one. I studied the NDE phenomenon for some time, but remained an atheist. However, in 2014, my life started to change. I faced serious problems, including legal issues, which threw me into a deep depression for 2 years. Many of my achievements and the respect I had were reversed, which hurt me deeply. It was during a conversation with my friend Paulo that he suggested I might have received a premonitory message. I started to reflect on this and realized that the impression I had really felt like a warning. In other words, because my life had been very easy until then, I was now going to face some difficulties, and I have been facing them. This hasn't passed yet. That's when I started a process of spiritualization, still full of doubts and confusion, but it has done me a lot of good. It's what has really helped me endure everything I've been suffering. I've tried to see things in a positive light, thinking that if something was taken from me in one area, I'm being given other things in return. With this, I started coming out of the depression around mid-2017. I remember that when I turned 53, I threw a birthday party to celebrate, because after almost 3 years, I finally started feeling better. This difficult period began at the end of 2013 and really hit hard in 2014. With this change in perspective, I returned to my normal life, thank God. Professionally, at least, I managed to resume my usual activities. I started attending a spiritualist study group, made up of scientists who gathered to discuss these phenomena. These spiritualist scientists who work with plasma physics, astronomy, biology, and oceanography discuss various topics, and I'm one of the most critical in the discussions. In NDEs, people often report seeing their own bodies and having the sensation of dying. That didn't happen to me. Another question is whether the experience made me lose my fear of death. I wouldn't say I lost the fear of death, but I gained a certain curiosity and an awareness of the difference between mind and consciousness, that is, brain and consciousness. For me, it became clear that there is a difference between the brain and consciousness. My consciousness was not in my brain during the experience. This is an idea explored in science. I also didn't gain any psychic or artistic abilities that I didn't have before. What the experience changed was the clarity of my perceptions. Today, I believe it's very likely that God exists and that there's something or someone looking out for us because I felt that in me. My experience was very humanoid, dealing with affection, sensations, and words. I think it was a life complement to guide me. Today I'm more passionate, less meritocratic. I realized that being meritocratic in an unequal country was idiotic. My lesson is to keep an open mind. I've been in academic temples like Harvard and MIT, and I realized that we know almost nothing. Many laws derive from empiricism. In reality, there's much more between heaven and earth than our vain philosophy can comprehend. I fell from the pedestal of arrogance and started to have an open mind. I didn't become a fetishist, but I believe there's a lot of different things that we will discover as our sensors and devices develop. I believe in God, but not the anthropocentric God we've created. We don't have all the answers yet. It would be presumptuous to think we know everything, and that everything can be explained by current scientific knowledge.
Incredible, this turnaround in life, isn't it? Even though Ilson's experience doesn't have enough points to be classified as an NDE based on the Grayson scale, it was an incredible journey and I hope it contributed something to you. In your opinion, was what he experienced an NDE or not? If you liked the video, share it with someone you care about. Thanks for watching until the end, and see you next time.